good evening to each one of you. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome you all for this exclusive session on considerations for establishing a business in Mexico, wherein the distinguished speaker will be providing on the unique opportunities for enhancing your business. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome Mr. Emeka John Eni, who is the Managing Partner, Attorney and Counselor at Law, Bicentennial Group from Mexico. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation to address at this session. The session is organized under the aegis of International Business Expert Committee, chaired by Mr. K. Ravi, who is the Director VR EBIS, and co-chaired by Mr. Ganesh Shenoy, who is the CFO of MTR Foods. The Chamber also acknowledges the support of annual sponsorship of the events by our distinguished member companies, Messrs. Bueller, Fundromax, MTR Foods, and Sona Group. I now request Mr. Ganesh Shenoy, who is the co-chairman of the International Business Expert Committee, to take it over from here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rupa, and welcome, a warm welcome to all the participants. BCIC has always been in the forefront of bringing, webinars and various workshop sessions with rich content across sectors. And this is really one amongst the many webinar sessions that we have convened. And a warm welcome to Mr. John Eni. We really look forward to this session, Mr. John. And, I think Mexico is one of the countries which are in the forefront of the American continent, shall we say, not just the South American continent. And I know for sure that Indian technology sector has really left its mark. Many of our IT majors have really set up flourishing businesses in Mexico. And I also am very happy to see Mr. Nakshatri also there, because food and agri is another major sector that I think India and Mexico can really partner and really drive forward. And, when you look at food and cuisine, I think we share many commonalities, maybe something from the spice world, but I think even from rice and, the kind of the cuisine and the preparations that we actually have, I think there is definitely common threads running between Mexico and India. And I would say the third area, which is little known, is mining and the iron and steel industry. I think this is another area where I guess we can really cooperate. And I think auto is another area which is not really talked about much. But here again, whether it's the two-wheeler industry or the four-wheeler industry, I think this is another sector which is ripe for, I won't be using the word exploitation, ripe for leverage between the two countries, because I think, many auto companies which are there in India have also established strong collaborations with Mexican companies. And last but not the least, I will touch upon aerospace, because this is another area where I think India can also support Mexico in terms of using the aerospace sector to really help in establishing a very strong communications platform for Mexico. And maybe we will hear more of this, Mr. John Eni, from you. And I will therefore pause here. And Rupa, I don't know whether Mr. Ravi or Mr. Nakshatri would also like to say a few words before we hand the floor to Mr. John Eni for his address. We look forward to great inputs from you, Mr. John Eni, to take this trade partnership, not just between India and Mexico, but really Karnataka and Mexico forward. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ganesh Shenoy. We also acknowledge the support of Mr. Surajit Roy for facilitating the session. And on behalf of Chamber, we acknowledge the presence of Ms. Chetna Khanna, who is from the Department of Economic and Tourism Affairs, Embassy of Mexico in India. Thank you, Ms. Chetna Khanna, for joining this session. And yes, sir, Mr. Nakshatri, would you like to speak, sir?
I had been to Mexico 3 years back. Okay, so it's a great country. I think tropically India and Mexico both are similar one. So I spent about a week there. That's why I thought that is Mexico means there is some touch to me. That's why I thought that let me attend this session. Okay, some takeaway maybe there. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you, Mr. Shane sir. Thank you, Mr. John Annie. Okay, let me also hear from you on what best we can do from the food sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Rupa.
Yes, sir. May I now request
Madam
Mr.
Rupa.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is Ravi here. Sorry, I just got in. Actually, I was in Dubai for the expo and just came about 2 hours back. So meanwhile, since I had the opportunity, since I was not prepared or anything, I just thought, let me attend this particular event. I am sure under the aegis of the international business, our co-chairman has already welcomed you all. We look forward to have more such interactions with Mexico. In fact, I did have a occasion to go to the Mexico stall. I saw it from outside, but I couldn't go inside. It was quite crowded. So let's look forward to hear from you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. That was the chairman of the International Business Expert Committee of the chairman. Thank you for joining, sir. And now may I request Mr. Emeka Eni to take over from here. Over to you, sir. We all look forward to your presentation, sir.
Thank you very much for the very warm welcome. Surajit and I, we've been doing presentations for a while. Okay, we've talked to many different audiences, and I think this is probably one of the warmest welcomes that we've got, and one of the most enthusiastic welcomes in terms of the level of interaction, the level of questions. I can feel the energy right now, even before we're getting started. So I really do like that. Can you all see my screen correctly? Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so nobody tell any jokes about my desktop. I have a lot of items open, so you know. All right. So what I did, I've got my handy dandy iPad here. And I was taking a lot of notes as we were going along. So what I'll try to do is sort of weave in as much information as possible I can across a variety of different industries. I don't think that we're actually going to be able to touch on everything. I don't think we're going to follow the progression exactly as planned with the with slide by slide. So I'm going to bit of a jump around so that we can make sure to cover all the topics of interest. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about specifically are sort of the technical and legal aspects about what it takes to actually do business, to get started doing a business in Mexico, to get your project to be exporting or manufacturing with a legal entity and some of the other implications. And as we go along, we can make some of the topics to be specific if you'd like. I think that might be best. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to get my window up because I'd like to see everyone as I'm doing the presentation. How long do I have for the presentation? Just to be clear, because I thought I had a little bit longer than it appears from the schedule. Do you know?
Yeah, Rupa, is that 30 minutes or 40 minutes?
Sir, 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Different days,
Oh.
sir. Total
Right.
45 minutes, you can take it up, sir.
Okay, so I will proceed quickly. And thank you to our country manager, Surajit, for putting this all together. He does an excellent job. Thank you for everyone who was able to attend. I understand also that we have somebody here who's from the embassy. Thank you very much for your attendance, and all the members of the industry and the general public. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your support. So let's begin. So first, my name is John Eni. I'm the managing partner of Mexican Incorporation, which is a part of Bicentennial Group LLC. We have been working with U.S., Indian companies, Chinese companies, European companies, any type of foreign companies to get started in Mexico for the better part of a decade. And we have a focus on foreign, right? We provide a variety of services that are not just, well, we started out with the core business, which is corporate formation, getting legal entities, but then we had to grow very quickly into tax strategy and accounting and payroll and logistics and matters of e-commerce and foreign trade, because there are certain bureaucratic barriers that we could call to entry in Mexico that present certain challenges. Okay, I was previously employed. I worked for the White House in the United States, the Office of the United States Trade Representative under President Obama. In the Office of the United States Trade Representative, which basically handles all the international treaty negotiations for commerce, the World Trade Organization representation and everything. And so I've been in this industry for a while. And so I hope that you find everything to be useful based on my practical information, but also from my more legal information as well. Right, so let's begin. So remember, when you are entering the Mexican market, there's a couple of things to take into consideration. One, the planning and execution is going to be very important. So I can't emphasize this more. When you're coming into the market, you have to make sure that you have everything sort of laid out step by step, and you have to know where you're going. So one of the first things is making sure that you have the assembly of the required documents for registering from the US or from India or from China, wherever the investor is coming from. You might find investors that aren't just coming from India, but you might want to pull together with some other people as well. But the point is you have to have this beginning pre-phase, which is gathering all the information, the documents, to become registered in Mexico, because that's really going to be the first step. And we'll look at that in a second. The other thing is to understand what we would call sort of the regulatory environment, making your roadmap. This needs to be one of the very first things. If you look at your product, the idea is if you look at your product or your service, you want to find out what are the obstacles for you to be able to deliver that product, to be able to manufacture that product, or deliver that service within Mexico. So in the case of products, you want to make sure that from the very beginning you're talking to a customs broker, or you're going to be needing to talk to a legal advisor to identify what are the steps and being able to plan out. And that way you know what you know and you know what you don't know. Right, and in Mexico, that's going to be one of the most important things that I can't stress. That I see with clients, they don't have that understanding of what's going to be required from the very beginning. Next is going to be establishing your legal entity. Number 4 is going to be establishing your tax registrations. This is you can't really operate a legal entity without your tax registrations in Mexico. I'll explain why in a little bit. Ongoing tax compliance. Mexico has a very advanced tax regime. That is probably one of the most unique in the world, similar to India, similar to Brazil, similar to some other countries in South America, but there's very few that have a sort of an advanced tax regime that's electronically based like Mexico does. Number 6 is going to be product regulation and compliance. And this is going to vary depending on your industry. I'll move along a little bit fast, so let me know if there's any questions that are going to come up. So basically, when you're coming in, you want to look at some areas that are going to be considered preliminary compliance, right? What are the industries? What are the products? What are the services that are going to require some type of preliminary compliance? And what we'll do is we'll sort of make a schedule of priorities with our services and our goods that we're going to have that will be based on whether or not the product has some type of regulation or doesn't have some type of regulation. So if we're looking at medicines, products for human consumption, electrical products, animal products, cosmetics, certain tools, hardware, construction equipment. In some cases, okay, not in all cases, you're going to find regulation in these areas. And the reason why I say some is because, for example, cosmetics has an import requirement. Electronic products have an import requirement. There's just a UL certification. Certain tools and hardware, construction equipment, if they're for the public. I know there's some people who are interested in learning about manufacturing here, but if certain tools, if certain construction projects or certain materials or machinery are used for the public, then they're going to have more regulations. If they're going to be used for industry, then you're going to have less regulation. But either way, you're going to see that if it's food, you're going to be cosmetics. If there's, I'm sorry, if it's anything for human consumption, is going to be by an agency called the Coffee Pries. You'll hear that term used a lot, Coffee Pries. If there's anything that requires some other type of regulation like labeling or electronic products, then you're going to see that you're going to require a laboratory certification for some of your products as well. Just the threshold matter. We'll talk about this a little bit more in detail. Okay. Before we get into establishing a legal entity, I want to go back and see, one of the things that was mentioned on our list of areas is the automotive area. Okay, tool and dyeing, machine tools. That's actually a very huge industry. There is an area of Mexico called Querétaro, which is right in the center, about 2 hours away from Mexico City, and you'll see there's the General Motors plant. Just a few hours away from Mexico City to the south, the other direction, there's the Puebla plant for Volkswagen. You have all these subparts. If you're familiar with how the auto industry in the United States works, Michigan, Detroit, you had the center there with the big three automakers, and then you had all these different industries within hundreds of miles that built up. Not many people, I guess, realize, but automotive is one of the largest export industries in Mexico. It's one of the largest manufacturing industries in Mexico. But in just a general sense, Surajit and I, over the last couple of weeks, we've had the chance to talk to many different people. And one of the most important things I think that people don't realize is that Mexico is one of the strongest players, number 7 in the world in terms of exports. So it's a huge market, and it's a huge opportunity for people to shift production into this country. And one of the things I want to make sure I get that I want to talk about quickly, we'll see this at the end, is the prevalence of free trade agreements. Okay, so when we talk about the different industries, and we have a lot of clients from Asia who are shifting over their production to Mexico, and the reason is they have access to these markets because of the vast array of free trade agreements that Mexico has with the European Union, with North America, US and Canada, with Central and Latin America, Japan, okay, now we're having the entry of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Mexico is positioned to stay and grow tremendously in the area of import and export and manufacturing, because it has this vast network, this vast and precious network of free trade agreements. So you can take that. If anything that you take from this agreement, from this conference, I think that's probably one of the most important things. So what does it mean to get started, right? What do you need? You need to get a legal entity, and this will allow you to get contracts. It'll allow you to perform compliance. Like I said, Mexico has this a fairly complicated tax regime, and a lot of times what companies will do, or what buyers will do, is they'll want you to have first your legal entity. Now that presents some of its own challenges. Okay, but you can establish yourself in Mexico by way of establishing a corporate entity or by establishing a branch. I personally think that establishing a corporate entity in the form of a limited liability company is probably going to be preferential to establishing a branch. And that's for tax reasons, which we can go on to later if there's any in the questions and answers. Remember that Mexico is a country that requires 2 shareholders or 2 owners of the legal entity in order to exist, right? There's no such thing as a wholly owned legal entity in Mexico. And so basically, you can have a combination of a parent company or a individual person, 99%, 1%, or 50-50%, doesn't matter, just as long as there's 2 legal owners. There's certain special aspects for foreigners that you want to be aware of. You need to have a legal representative in Mexico, okay, and that means maybe if you have somebody who, well, they have to be a Mexican citizen. You can't be your own legal representative as a foreigner. Unless you're a foreigner with a permanent residence card and registered before the tax authorities. But that's something to keep in mind, and we'll look at that a little bit further. And you also need a registered office, okay? Now, getting over this, like I said, their legal representative is going to be something that's going to be very important. So a lot of times what companies will do is they will hire person who is there. Can everybody see my screen? I just want to make sure everybody's seeing my screen. Okay, is that all right?
Yes, it's visible, sir.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So finding a local employee or local country manager is going to be very, very important. A lot of times companies will use, when they first come into the market, their accountant or their lawyer. But the important thing is to remember that this has a fixed monthly cost, okay? And a lot of times foreign companies do not anticipate having to absorb that cost of having a local representative. If you're going to be coming to Mexico without sort of a general knowledge, we're talking about the legal aspects right now, what it takes to form a company. But the idea of having a local country manager is something that's going to be very important for anybody who's going to be engaged in foreign investment. Because I will tell you right now, there's going to be lots of cultural differences. There's going to be lots of linguistics differences. And the companies that actually are able to make it are the ones who are able to find a local country manager. Even I don't care if you have to pay their salary for a few months and not have them do much. But the thing is, somebody who's able to know your product, somebody who's able to sell your product, your service, who's able to speak both languages, right? And be that cultural barrier. That's going to be extraordinarily important. Do not say that, okay, well, I can just go at it alone, all right? Find some way to find a local manager who is going to be able to work with you, who's going to be able to get stuff done, who's very organized, very, very important, and can successfully represent your interests in country, okay? If you have any questions about this, go ahead and write them in the chat. You can talk to me afterwards. But you should be getting on LinkedIn. You should be getting on, Indeed, and finding qualified candidates who are able to represent your company and your interest. Even if it takes a little while, it's well worth it. Okay. One of the things that our firm does is we provide a legal representative for you if you need, at least for the purposes of registering your company. And the legal representative, right, you can use this as long as you need. For example, we can process your tax ID number. But that's one of the important things, is finding a legal representative for your company who can act as a registered agent, apart from country manager. That's something different, but who can act as a registered agent for purposes of maintaining the registration of the company. So one of the most important things about when it comes to doing business in Mexico is the tax registration, okay? Because the tax registration is effectively used as a de facto corporate registration number, okay? And there's two parts. You have the tax ID, then you have also what's called the e-firma, or the electronic signature. So be careful here, because if you're going to be entering the market, a lot of times people will come in and say, well, I can get your company started, but they won't necessarily be able to get the tax ID number. They won't be able to get the e-signature. And without those two things, you can't pay your taxes. You can't make your monthly VAT filings, your monthly income tax filings, etc. So this is a sort of common problem that happens with a lot of people. Make sure that when you have the registration of the company, that you also have the e-firma and you have the RFC tax ID number also included within whatever that service is. And they provide the registered office and they provide the local legal representative to make those procedures possible. Okay, just going to jump over that slide. So looking at the sort of the timeline here. Okay, so most of our clients come from the US. We have, I say number 2 in this list is probably India after that. India, US, Canada are probably the biggest places where we have our clients from. So we're very familiar with that process of where to get documents. But you have this pre-registration phase where we have to get powers of attorney. We have to get the articles of incorporation for your company in India if you're going to use that as the owner of the Mexican company. Copies of bylaw. And in India in particular, there's nothing akin to a certificate of good standing or continuing registration. But you're going to get the documents necessary for the Mexican incorporation from the Chamber of Commerce for the state where you reside. And usually most of the states in India will take maybe about a week to 2 weeks to get you the documents that you need. So keep that in mind. Some people can get it done in 1 week. Most of our clients from India, from their state chamber of commerce will get it done in 2 weeks. Okay, and then the registration phase for the company, this takes about 2 weeks. We need translated documents from English to Spanish. They have to be done within Mexico by an authorized, certified government translator. Not everybody can do it. And basically, you can see there's many steps. There's about 7 integral steps here that are involved. So this is why the process takes longer than maybe in some other jurisdictions. And also at every single step, there's a place where things can go wrong. So when you're finding help, it's going to be very important not to just say, okay, well, I can find a lawyer who can do this. I can find a notary who can do my incorporation for me. You really need to find somebody who's able to do it quickly, but also who has the experience with foreign clients. Because any single one of these steps, if there's a mess up, the whole process has to stop. And if it stops, it's not uncommon for it to stop for 2 or 3 months while you get all these documents replaced. So find legal help who can do this process in 2 or 3 weeks and not run into any problems. Okay. Number 2, the SAT registration. Because of COVID, this has caused some problems because the initial registration of companies with the SAT, which is the tax authority for Mexico, Servicio de Administración Tributaria, there's a lot of lack of appointments, and that causes a tremendous backlog. So keep that in mind in your timing. Once we get over this COVID nonsense, hopefully those timings will go up. But our company, we get that done in about 1 to 2 weeks. Bank accounts, I won't go too much into bank accounts, but you have to be careful. There's a lot of requirements, lots of bureaucracy for bank accounts. It's not uncommon for this process to take 2 months. A lot of times they'll require a visit to the branch of the company, the office of the company. But what happens if you don't have an office yet? So it's sort of a chicken before the egg type of, problem that happens. So keep in mind that you have to be planning on confronting this problem of the bank account from the beginning. In my opinion, to avoid any type of problems is you want to put a local signatory, right? Who's your country manager, who's your accountant, who's your lawyer with the limited authority to open the bank account. Our bank that we use allows you to, sign the documents yourself, and they'll send them to you by mail, and the process takes about 3 weeks instead of like 2 months or whatever the case may be. But the point is, you want to ask questions about the bank account from the very beginning because they're problematic and they tend to cause delays in your project. Okay, so tax considerations. I understand that we just finished, I think we just finished the 15-minute mark, so we're about halfway. I think that's correct. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tax compliance and obligations. This is going to be something that's going to take a lot of people off guard. It's going to catch people off guard because, as I said, in Mexico, everything is done by way of a proprietary information technology system. Right? So all the filings, okay, anything that needs to be declared, it's all done online. Don't expect to be able to do your own taxes on your own. You're going to need to have somebody, and you need to have the proprietary software that exists only for Mexico. Okay, it exists only for Mexico, and so there's VAT, 16%. Remember VAT. India has a general services tax as well, goods and services tax as well. But in Mexico, when you have to import products, you always have to pay the 16% at the border, and then you get that back because when you charge your clients for products or services, you're going to in turn pay them. They're going to collect 16%. These filings for VAT have to be made every single month, and of course every single year with a definitive filing. Your income tax has to be declared with a baseline 30% deduction. Income tax, not deduction, but a 30% income tax rate for corporations, taking that into account, taking into account that it's also paid on a monthly basis. It's also filed on a monthly basis. However, with all the applicable deductions, now they're seeing that you can do, like I said, you want to make sure that you have somebody who's familiarized with working with international businesses, because what the accountant is going to do is work with the relationship between your local Mexican company and your foreign company to make sure that profits are distributed accordingly and that your baseline tax rate is the lowest possible. There's also a requirement for what's called electronic invoicing, okay? Factura, as it's called. And so that means for any of your costs in Mexico, in order to be deductible, or basically any of the costs of the people you're selling to, they have an electronic invoice system where, for example, if I go to a restaurant and I bring a client and I want this, $150 meal to be deductible from my taxes, I have to say, okay, okay, the waiter, they say, well, did you enjoy your meal? They bring up everything, with the terminal to make your payment, and they say, requieres factura, necesitas factura. And that means, do you require an invoice? And so I bring it up and I show them my information, tell them my company name, my corporate number, my corporate address, the basic information, and they have to go and process my invoice, right? And it's an electronically sealed invoice that has to be generated by their accountant or by some type of proprietary software. But unless I get that invoice and I do the legwork to obtain it, that for me is not going to be a deductible expense. So think about that. If you're going to have buyers, they're also going to have to issue you an invoice, okay? Or you're going to have to issue them an invoice. They're going to make payment for you with everything. That's another particularity about Mexico that you'll have to get accustomed to. That's going to be very different. We provide all those tax services, the monthly tax filings, the income tax filings, the invoicing services. We set up your distribution agreements if you need. We set up anything that's in the form of tax infrastructure. But the idea is to make sure that you're aware of these requirements and that you have somebody on board who's able to understand the dynamics of working with international clients. To finalize, we're going to talk about importation and logistics. Now, as I said before, one of the most important things is to begin with the customs broker, to begin with the legal advisor, because what's going to happen is that as you begin to ship products into Mexico, if that's what the case is, importing or exporting to Mexico, you want to make sure that you have everything, all the regulations identified for products coming in, the products going out, and the different industry applicable areas. We talked a little bit about agriculture, for example. Whenever you're going to be importing or exporting agricultural products, I think the regulation is actually going to be fairly easy. If you're talking about plant-based products or something like that, the actual process of the logistics and the required regulations that are going to be involved, it's going to be mostly a phytosanitary certificate. In some cases, we had a client who developed a special type of fertilizer that they were importing from Guatemala, which is just to the south of Mexico. It's about one or two countries over. And when they had to bring the product in, because they won a government contract, it probably only took them maybe about a month and a half to get the product registered in Mexico, and they were able to deliver and everything. So I think it's one of the great industries that you can take care of. We also have another client who was importing seeds from Israel. They're just beginning. This took them a little bit of a while to find out exactly what products they could import, because remember, according to World Trade Organization rules, according to international trade rules, in general, for some agro products, if we're talking about meats, if we're talking about some type of plant-based products, you have to have some sort of agreement between the two countries for phytosanitary and sanitary measures. And unless your country has those type of agreements in place, they might have a free trade agreement. Well, no, they probably don't. But if they might have some type of international arrangement to facilitate trade. But if you don't have a sub-agreement for the specific category of different products, whether it's seeds, whether it's meats, whether it's pork, whether it could be anything, you're not going to be able to import that product easily. So that's why I say, obviously, what we did with this client, we went through, we discussed with the customs broker, and we found out what products they had from which countries, and which one of those countries already had an agreement for phytosanitary measures for them to import any type of meat products or the seeds or whatever that they were going into. One of the quick things before I end here, I'm assuming we're out of time, is another industry is technology. keep in mind, technology is something that is extraordinarily near and dear to Mexican industry because there is a massive amount of talent. One of the divisions in our company is solely dedicated to information technology. So there's opportunities here in Mexico for information and technology as well. I think we're out of time. Is that correct? We can end it here and open up for the question and answers if you'd like. Would you like to open up for the question and answers? I think we're out of time. Hello? Are we still online? I'm not sure if anybody can hear me.
Hello.
Did you want to open up for the question and answer? I didn't want to go over time.
Mr. Ravi, sir,
Hello,
please go ahead, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. John, I just
Yes.
would like to understand. I think most of the tax compliances and the tax regime, tax rates seems to be very much like India.
Yeah.
So I just would like to know that how many Mexican companies have come to India and how many Indian companies in Mexico? Do you have any statistics?
No, I can't. There is a way to find out. There's what they call the Foreign Investment Registry, Registro Nacional de Inversión Extranjera is what it's called in Spanish. And you can actually find out how many companies have been incorporated in Mexico with Indian investment, right? We did this study a few years ago, last year or whatever, and we found out that there were maybe a couple of thousands of companies who were incorporated from the United States. And then we found out that we represented a total of about 4% of all investment from the United States in Mexico in terms of number of corporations. So you can look at the Foreign Investment Registry to find out the stats for India.
And how much you mentioned, I think you said about 2 to 3 weeks to incorporate a company. Am I right?
Right. So 2 to 3 weeks to incorporate the company. Okay. That is, you have to get everything from India first. And depending on how quickly the Chamber of Commerce for your state can do that, it may be about a week and a half. But in total, you want to really put a total amount of maybe about a month and a half to incorporate.
Okay, because in India it takes much more time compared to it takes at least 3 to 4 months because though there's a simplification, there's a lot of documentation. So they always say that in India starting is very tough, but once you start, it's very good. The market is huge and everything is smooth up. And they also say you can go to Vietnam. The entry is very smooth, but later on it is very tough to run the business, is what I'm told. Now, coming back to, see, we are basically looking at how we can facilitate or how we can help our members of BCIC to do business with Mexico, right? Now, are there any particular sectors which you feel, see, as you know, India, Bangalore is very strong in IT, biotechnology and in the defense areas. Do you think there are any companies, Mexican companies would like to collaborate with the Indian companies or the Bangalore-based companies, or what exactly do you think? Can you just give us some focus so that it becomes easy for us to advise? I'm also a chartered accountant practicing in India, in Bangalore. So what I just would like to know is, can you just say, sort of give a suggestion as to what sort of companies, or Indian companies or Bangalore-based companies can do in Mexico, and what sort of Mexican companies are interested in Indian companies?
Well, let's see. So a lot of the companies that come from India, HCL is one of the largest IT providers in Mexico. They're an Indian company. I can tell you where I'm looking at my, in the city, I'm looking behind me right now out the window, and there are several HCL towers with the words HCL on them. So it's IT is one of the biggest industries in Mexico in terms of, especially for Indian companies that are looking to build a presence on this side of the world with this time zone. And so, that's something to keep in mind. Manufacturing, I would say, India ultimately has some type of competitive advantage with Mexico in terms of manufacturing, industrial products. So a lot of companies that we see are importing industrial products into Mexico. Some are we haven't seen as many transferring production to Mexico because it does have a slightly higher production cost. But the idea of exporting from India to Mexico is one of a very big area, especially in agriculture industry. As far I'm talking about the industrial machines that are behind the agriculture industry, like sorting and vegetable processing and things like that. There is right now, I would say, the trade between the U.S. and Mexico, the trade between India and Mexico is not as high as it should be. To be honest with you, I was looking at these numbers the other day. We had a meeting with the World Trade Center, one of the World Trade Centers in India, and I noticed the trade could be up. That means there's a lot of openings in various industries right now. So just because there's not a lot of trade in one industry at this point, there's a whole lot of competitive advantage to be gained, and a whole lot of other industries that are ripe for discovery.
Okay. I think, sir, one small question.
Sure.
The startups in Bangalore, are quite aggressive. Do you think there are certain areas in startup companies which can get a good, what should I say, response from the Mexican, from your country?
Yes, I mean, primarily, like I said, as one of the big things. Well, let me ask you another question. When you say startup companies, okay, are you talking about a particular industry or startup company?
Yeah, particularly in IT.
IT, absolutely. And I didn't, I was trying to avoid saying it over again, but the thing is, I think IT is one of the largest sectors that we see of opportunity, particularly for startups, because there's a low amount of cost and overhead. The only thing about IT that I would say is that there's an issue right now with staffing and outsourcing services that you have to be very careful about, because in Mexico there's regulation regarding staffing and outsourcing. So if you want to send employees to the premises of a client, you have to have a special registration to do that, and it could only be in a specialized area, not generally. But it's one of the most prominent areas right now for investment for startups within Mexico.
Okay, I understand.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
John, it was a nice presentation. Thank you so much, and I think great opportunity for India and the Mexico to collaborate.
Right.
Being in India and Mexico, both are tropical in nature, and also I think similar to that. I think the climate and other things. And I want to know further more details on either any great opportunity for India in the food business or the agricultural the collaboration between India and Mexico in the coming years.
Well, it's interesting because so the food industry it's big. Mexico is sort of living through this gastronomical revolution, okay, and what that means is there's lots of opportunities to in the food industry. I think this topic comes up a lot in our discussions. The spices, right? I think that there's a lack of certain spices and seasonings and different areas that come from India in general. I'm a big fan of Indian food. I grew up with Indian food in the U.S. and it's just not the same. I can't explain it. I think there's definitely a lack of the spices that go into food, especially from the Indian subcontinent. And I think that there would be a very much an industry in that area. I think in terms of agriculture, there's fertilizers are a very big product because Mexico is a very big agro producing country. Lots of farms, lots of industrialized farms, everything like that. So what we've seen is a pattern where different types of products that are used ancillary to agriculture, different chemicals, different fertilizers, especially in the terms of natural fertilizers and things like that. That's a very, very big industry right now in Mexico. But then also with the industrial products that are associated with agriculture as well. That's a very big industry that I think India in particular could have a very good advantage for bringing products in and seeing trade between the two countries.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Please, any other questions while we still have time? Tourism is another area. Very much tourism.
Yeah.
Mexicans travel a lot. They're traveling a lot more internationally than perhaps 6 years, a decade ago. Definitely, with the growth of the middle class. That is an industry. Well, Mexico is one of the top destinations worldwide for tourism, but also so is India. There's lots of opportunities in the tourism industries as well.
Mr. Roy, would you like to say a few words, sir?
Hello, Rupa, did you ask? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Did you ask me?
No, sir, Mr. Roy, sir. Surajit Roy.
Oh, Roy. Oh, sorry, yeah. It felt like Ravi, yeah.
Actually, I have just a couple of questions. So I suppose in an overall sense, after this presentation and what you've seen with the steps involved with what we've had in our comments about the different industries, what are your general perceptions of Mexico as far as from an expansion standpoint, a business standpoint, an opportunity standpoint? I'd be interested in very much hearing some of your comments from the audience.
I think there was an invitation from Madam to say something. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, so nice to get an opportunity to talk out here. I will only request John, if you can shed some light on this. For example, if some companies who are in Karnataka or Bangalore, maybe from different sectors, how easily they can start their business operations over there. They may not be in a position to start their entity over there, but
Right.
maybe they like to sell their products and services over there. So if you can give us summary about
Yes.
how they can be help in this regard.
Okay. Let's take my screen off here. So that's actually a very, very good question that you asked, Surajit. I think it's very, very important for any company that really wants to, they need to get online and they need to look for a market for their services or for their goods. You don't need a legal entity to start searching. But one of the things is, if you're serious about it, Mexico has a tremendous market. Has 130 million people almost. Okay, so the idea of there not being a market is absurd. It's a great market that's open. What I would do is take it seriously. It's a good opportunity for many industries for India. Get started by having one. If you're looking to sell your products in Mexico, you don't need to have your legal entity at first. You can sell by way of what we call a commercializer, a third party who's able to import your product, a distributor who's able to import and distribute your product. That's the way that I would go first if you want to do a test. You're going to increase the cost of doing business, but if you're looking to test the waters, get a hold of a company that's able to assist you in your industry to get your product into the Mexican market. Okay, look for someone to form a partnership with who has local knowledge, perhaps, if you're looking for manufacturing, and see if there's a market for your products, if there's buyers. Okay, and once you know that there's a handful of buyers, you're going to know that there's more of them out there as well, and then you can make the few $1,000s of investment to incorporate your entity. But there's ways to get into the market, and I'll just summarize them. Make sure that you're having affiliations with people in your industry who have local specific knowledge to find you buyers, okay? Find you points of sales for your product, or vice versa. If you're looking to buy something in Mexico, that's probably a little bit easier, okay? And then exporting it to India. But finding a way for someone to act as a temporary bridge between you getting your product or your service from India to Mexico. Hiring good staff. It is very well worth it, even if it costs you a little bit of money per month. It's very worth it to hire somebody. Go online, even if you have to use a recruitment agency. Find an independent contractor. Find somebody who's able to act as a local sales representative or act as a local country representative. Okay, that's going to make the difference between having a successful product or not. That's what I would say to anybody who's looking to engage in business activity.
So, Mr. John, can I just ask a quick question? Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Just thank you. This was very interesting, the information that you shared, and Mr. Surijit, I think you're bringing in the perspective.
One who doesn't want to really set up office yet, right? But the language of communication, is that Spanish would be a requirement for all, or do people speak English?
So it depends. It's a bit of a mixture. Many people speak English in varying degrees. I'd say most people speak English in any type of industry that you're going to be dealing with will speak English at an acceptable level where you can communicate, where you can interact with them, you can seal the deal if you really want to. I would say one word of caution is that there is the X factor that exists, and that X factor is, of course, how do you connect with people? And the thing is, this is why I say it's probably a very important requirement to have a local representative, because they're able to connect in a way that perhaps you're not going to be able to. You might be speaking the same language, right, but it's the way that you shake hands, the way you share a meal, it's the way that there's a way of Mexican culture is it can be very friendly, very friendly, and making that friendly connection in some ways, I feel to go to that next level requires some knowledge of Spanish, and that's why I think it's good to have a local representative who's working with you, who can cross that bridge, but you can function perfectly well in English.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good question.
Mr. John, I have a small suggestion. Is it possible for you to help us?
I think Mr.
Hello.
Go ahead. You can continue. I'm listening to you.
Yeah, please carry on.
I just wanted to know if your company can help us in through the chamber or any other organization. If some of these some companies would like to collaborate with Indian companies, and we would like to collaborate with foreign Mexican companies. Is there any way, as the international business committee from the BCIC, we could sort of initiate this process so that in the course of time they can also, if necessary, appoint a company for doing some market research, then find out the test the waters, then finally get into incorporation. So how can we, because what happens most of the times, we all meet, we all talk, and then it stops. So how can we continue this process of trying to find out how our companies, for example, there might be ABC company in Bangalore who would like to do some sort of export to Mexico. So he has this problem. One is to go through the chamber there or through the Ministry of Commerce and things like that. Now, is there any way you can facilitate or you can help us to talk with the local chamber, and let's start sharing information? What sort of companies? For example, in Israel, they have a chamber of commerce. Everything is posted on the website, and we do get a lot of responses. So, is there anything like that between India and Mexico where we could take it forward?
Yes, I mean there is. I mean the last month one of our clients had an event where the ambassador of India came to the event for our client. We were there as well.
Yeah.
We would really like to put together some type of collaboration with the embassies, be it the Mexican embassy in New Delhi or the Indian embassy in Mexico City. I think we're probably going to end up doing the Indian embassy in Mexico City because we have certain contacts there to put together some type of collaboration or an event to promote business contacts. But also working with the chambers of commerce, to promote the relationship between India and Mexico. So yes, I mean, we'd be available to offer any type of support or assistance in that area for promoting business activities between the two countries in conjunction with yourselves. Right.
Recently, BCIC has opened a small hall for purpose of startup. Now, what we could do, if any Mexican companies would like to test the waters in India with not much of cost, they can surely use the facilities of the BCIC startup hall with the permission of the chamber. Probably these sort of, because the Swedish Trade Council has an office in Bangalore. They promote all the new companies to set up their offices, their premises. Similarly, Japan gives 1 month or 2 months free usage of their office space. So if something similar is there in Mexico, probably if you can highlight.
So you're talking about like a combined trade office? Is that it?
Yeah. Like, for example, Jetro provides free office space for a couple of months for new companies who wanting to do business there. The Swedish State Council also facilitates by renting space in Bangalore.
I have not personally heard of anything similar to that. Like I'm aware of the program you're talking about. But in Mexico, I don't think I personally ever heard of anything that's similar. I think one of the good areas would be to look at the World Trade Association. There's a very, very large World Trade Organization, the World Trade Center in Mexico City, and
Okay.
that would be a very good option to approach. There's also country-specific sort of clusters. They call them clusters, where you can go in and you can promote your business to to foreign companies within Mexico, and vice versa, that have, you know, sort of the group of companies. But as far as any local promotional organizations besides the chambers of commerce, okay, there is also by industry. So there's a lot of industry trade associations. Those are actually very good. I guess the only issue is finding the names of those trade associations, because there's many, and finding which ones are the prominent ones. But that's also a very, very, very excellent way. For example, agricultural products. I have a product that I manufacture that is a septic product for, you know, treatment of water, and we have a large trade association that we're associated with, that we're doing an event with and everything. So that's also, I think, a very, very excellent way to promote your goods and services. It's just finding out who those trade associations are and how prominent they are and how many members they have are, and how receptive they are to having you come up and give some type of presentation or collaboration.
Yeah, I think that, sir, taking forward, I can only promise you one thing. Mr. Vineet Verma, who is the chairman of the tourism committee in the BCIC, is also the CEO of World Trade Center Bangalore. And in the last few weeks back, he already mentioned that we'll have some joint meetings with the World Trade Centers. Probably when we have the next meeting, we could include the World Trade Center in Mexico as part of our initial interaction with the WTC, because WTC Bangalore has got connections across the world. And probably I think this could be one of the, the suggestion you've given about collaborating with WTC. I think we shall surely do that, sir.
I like the idea. I think it's a very good idea. The World Trade Center associations are very prominent, very well connected.
Okay.
So that's a winning formula.
Sure, we'll surely do that, sir. Thank you. Rupa, if there's any more questions, or if there are no more questions, I think we can close the meeting.
Conclude, sir. Yes. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much, Mr. John Eni, for addressing on this exclusive session. And thank you once again, Mr. Surjit Roy, for facilitating the session. And we look forward to many more interactions in the future as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Surjit. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Wonderful session, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.